item 8. Who should I give this to? Kevin.
Item number 8, in your packet is a letter from Mr. Draskovich that he submitted to the board on February 19th, indicating that he wrote a check to the district in the amount of $30,556, and also indicated that shortly after he wrote that check back in 2005, the district refunded him $1,500. Leaving a total of $29,056 left remaining. The district staff went back and looked at the numbers here, and we do show that Mr. Draskovich wrote a check to the district in the amount of $30,556 as he indicated. $16,960 of that was for impact fees for 8 lots. $8,096 was for ordinance 2 fees for 8 lots. $4,000 was for the ordinance 3 that we just talked about for 8 lots, and $1,500 was installation fees for 6 lots. In September of 2005, the district cut a check to Mr. Draskovich in the amount of $5,500, not the $1,500 that he claimed in his letters.
This was in 06?
Yes, no, in 05.
05.
Yeah, September 6th of 2005, the district cut a check to Mr. Draskovich for $5,500, reimbursing him $4,000 for ordinance 3 for 8 lots, and $1,500 reimbursement for 6 meter installs. And that check cleared about 10 days after we cut the check to him. Based on that, and the district's policy that there's no refunds for ordinance 2 and impact fees, the district holds a position that we paid him $5,500 for those items that we could have reimbursed him for, and that the district, based on the board's policy of not reimbursing for ordinance 2 or impact fees, does not owe Mr. Draskovich additional funds. So that's where staff's recommendation is to the board. I suggest you ask Mr. Draskovich.
No, I didn't know I was reimbursed for the ordinance 3. I knew what happened was when I did this, they started to charge me every month for service. And they say because you paid for the installation. And so they said if you don't have to pay every month for this installation, we'll reimburse you installation. I didn't remember you writing me a check for the ordinance 3 fees.
Yeah.
But you did.
Yeah, that according, and we've got the bank records and everything showing that.
That's great. Then I asked for the receipt so I knew what was going on, and it was my mistake. I don't mean to be asking for something that you paid for. But the problem is I had planned on developing those half-acre lots with the secondary water. And because it's hard to use a half-acre because of the water, and then when you decided not to have secondary water in Bunkerville anymore, and made it not feasible for me to develop those lots. To be honest with you right now, the fees, I'm giving up like over $20,000 what the fees would cost right now if I were to apply for them. I'm not asking for that. I'm just not able to use, I've never hooked up, I've never done anything on it, I just paid for it. I still own the land, it was me who did it. But it's not feasible to develop them without the secondary water. And I mentioned that at that last one, you guys decided not to do secondary water anymore. So that's why I asked to have that reimbursed, even though, like I say right now, it'd be like maybe not the 29, it'd be like 25. And the fees right here would be like, for the 8 lots, it'd be over $40,000. 48, 45. So
Don't those costs enhance the price of the property?
I'm sorry,
Doesn't the cost that you paid enhance the property values? If you went to sell those lots, would you take that?
Well, they were parcels, they're not lots.
Pardon?
They're parcels, they're
Right.
not lots. Two of the
Well,
parcels,
partial, whatever.
two of the parcels can't even be developed because they're too narrow. They just, when I came and applied for them, they just said you have to show me you have so many parcels. two of those that I bought aren't even designated two parcels. Two of the parcels are like 50 by 500, almost 1,000 feet, you know. But he said if you got that many parcels, I'll let you pay this fee for it for future development on it. And so they're not, if you notice, two of them aren't even tied to any lot or any parcel. And two of the 6 parcels are not developable.
But that's a county problem, not a district problem.
What's that got to do with
right?
us?
I mean,
Well, the fact that you're saying, like I say, I had planned on developing lots, half-acre lots, but when you took away the secondary water, it made it where it's not feasible. But that was my rationale.
Help me out here, Mr. Bullwinkle.
I think the board's hands are tied on this issue. I understand Mr. Draskovich's issue and why he's requesting this, but currently, at least with our current rules and regulations, the Ordinance 2 policy says specifically Ordinance 2 fees are not refundable under any circumstance, and there's also a provision in the impact fee connection and service fee schedule that says under no circumstances shall impact fees be refunded. And those are essentially the fees that you're asking for a refund at this time. And so without a change to these policies, the board would be going against their own internal policies to opt to give a refund right now with the way they're written. I mean, the language is pretty clear and says under any circumstances. Both of those say under no circumstances or under any circumstances.
The thing that's a little weird to me is that the fact that you're saying that two of those lots aren't tied, two of the impact fees aren't tied to lots?
Correct.
It was my understanding that Ordinance 2 fees were always tied to lots.
Well, I think the way things are done now, typically when we are having Ordinance 2 fees paid,
Yeah.
there's a plat map that comes in and we're tying them to parcels and giving them for the platted lots. I don't know what was done back then.
Can I wasn't part of the district, but just I worked at Both Brothers, and I know that some of the PUDs, before the fees went up, they paid in advance for what they were projecting their development. So say they paid 500 fees, it went to that PUD. So these two that aren't assigned to something, it's very likely that it was intended to go to one of the parcels that was developable so that he could have 3 on 1. I don't know, because like I said, I wasn't part of it, but I know that there is, you know, developments out there that have an allotted amount of impact and ordinance fees that have been paid, or ordinance fees. They didn't pay the impact, they paid the ordinance fees, and it was a certain amount because that's what they were projecting their development to be at the height of it, and they were trying to get in before the prices went up. So it's locked to a large parcel, but not necessarily a lot.
And within the county, you can also, it's possible to take, if I'm mistaken, Rich, tell me, but those parcels can be combined at the county level and redivided so that then they could be sold, combined in a way where the property would be sellable.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the map to see.
I think what Eric says is.
Right, if there's no other comments, I'm ready to make a motion.
Okay.
Well, like I say, 2 of them were just assigned to me. They're not assigned to any
Yeah.
piece of property.
And I looked into this a little bit, Bob, excuse me, Craig, if you don't mind. You know, I guess the lining on, the silver lining is that you paid $912 for Ordinance 2 fees have gone up to $3,300, so.
Now, if I could sell them to somebody, I'd be very happy.
Well, I hope someday that profits,
I really do. I hope you will.
Appreciate staff for the research. I think even Mr. Draskovich realizes that he has been reimbursed for things. So I would move that we deny the request by Robert Draskovich for reimbursement of impact and Ordinance 2 fees.
I'll second that.
Have a motion and a second. Those in favor, raise your right hand. 4 in favor, 1 absent. That motion carries. Thank you.
May I just ask, what can I do with them? I mean, what do I do with them?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
what can you do with them? Hopefully someday, I hope that someday you develop them and sell them.
I mean,
Obviously, On the original intent.
On those two that aren't assigned to any property, what do can I just put them on any piece of property I want to without asking you guys? Just
I don't know, we look into that and see
You
what,
have to follow the transfer
That's
policy.
It's part of the
Policy,
transfer
just
ordinance
like what we
2
just
feet.
talked about.
well, but we just talked about it, and if he owns another piece of property and wants to use it
You
on it,
have
that's
to
what
just
he's,
follow
that's what
the
he's
policy.
talking about, right, Bob?
Yeah, I mean,
If
if
you own
I,
another piece in town and wanna use them there, that's
Come in,
my
come in, give
understanding.
us that, go through the process.
It goes through the process.
Right,
do I have to own it?
Yes, you do.
yeah, that was the whole discussion prior,
Mhm.
so.
No,
Yeah,
so
that was part of the clarification discussion we had earlier, was that to transfer ordinance 2 policies does require common ownership.
do I have to own it? If I'm in partners with somebody on it, is that good enough?
Well,
That's part of the clarification, I think we talked originally about substantial ownership,
yeah,
so-
there was some discussion at the last, I guess I'd have to go back and review the tape on that last discussion, but there was discussion about the amount of ownership.
That's-
Because there are, a lot of times developers have different entities that have similar ownership, but different names as far as liability purposes and stuff. So that will be part of the clarification of the policy.
That's part of what you're gonna do for
Yes.
us, right?
So you guys are gonna clarify something after I've already purchased it, right?
Well, the transfer, well, I mean, the transfer policy wasn't adopted at the time you purchased it anyway. That's a new policy.
I know, so I purchased something, and then after I purchased it, you guys have made it so that I can't sell it or transfer it.
No, actually, we made it so
No.
you can transfer it.
The transfer policy's new. You could, originally, there was no mechanism to even transfer the ordinance 2 fees. It originally said they're non-refundable, and there was no mechanism for transferring. That's a new
Yeah,
addition.
But then what you're saying is those two that aren't attached to a piece of property, just to me. Before you guys made this transfer policy, they were,
But that, Bob, that, just for clarification, unless you can help me out here, that was you that requested that from us based
Yes.
on your parcel of land. That had nothing to do with the water district. You're the
Yeah.
one that came in and requested that. We can't control what a guy like yourself or developer comes in and requests on hookups, ordinance 2, those kind of things. So that, I mean, I can appreciate where you're coming from on that, but that was something that you thought that you were gonna develop.
so this has always been the policy that you can't use them someplace else or sell them or anything like that. Is
That
always-
was a previous policy, correct?
Yes, I want my fees back. I mean, that could be, I know, I understand why you're asking for it, but it could be that someone comes in and says, you know what, the market dropped, I don't want to develop these lots anymore, give me my ordinance 2 fees back. I mean, I know there's a change in circumstances and why you're doing it, but to some extent, you're asking the district to ensure that you'll get your fees back if things don't work out the way you planned.
Yeah, we just won't do that.
In my particular case, you guys canceled the secondary water, and
No,
that's why I came here to do that.
Yeah, but the ordinance 3 fees were reimbursed in '05. So,
No, but the hookup.
you had no secondary water.
Could I see
to
that
the lot.
receipt too? I'm sorry, I didn't have a copy of that receipt
Yeah, we can get a
Yeah,
copy
let's
for
get
you.
a copy for
on that, you
Yeah.
know.
so.
I think,
Okay.
yeah. Okay.
Any other comments on item 9?
Thank you for your
It's been voted
consideration.
on.
We're moving on, we're done.
We're done. We're on 10.